My name is Jason, 56 years old. I just landed at the airport after 3 months in Dubai. Eager to surprise my family for Christmas, I never imagined what awaited me. Standing outside our living room window, I felt my heart shatter. My wife Linda sat crying on the balcony, staring at Christmas lights. Inside, my son Ethan laughed with the Morgans, his in-laws, as if I never existed. Nobody noticed me standing there, but I understood everything. By dawn, I had changed every lock and turned off all the lights. Before I continue this heartbreaking story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever felt invisible to the people who should value you most. This Christmas tale might break your heart, but I promise the ending will give you hope. I spent 30 years as a senior construction engineer, working tirelessly to build a life for my family. My days consisted of overtime traveling for projects and missing many family events to ensure Linda and Ethan would never want for anything. I still remember the countless nights sleeping in temporary housing at construction sites across the country, staring at their photos and reminding myself why I was sacrificing so much. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Michigan, son of a factory worker who lost his job during the economic downturn. From age 16, I worked after school at a local hardware store, saving every penny for college. Those early struggles shaped my determination to provide stability for my own family someday. Linda and I met during my junior year at engineering school. She worked in the campus library with bright eyes and a laugh that echoed through the quiet study halls. Our courtship was simple but meaningful. We would share coffee from a thermos on cold mornings, walking through campus, discussing our dreams. I proposed after graduation with a tiny diamond ring that took me 8 months to save for. She cried when she said yes, promising we would build a beautiful life together. Our early marriage years were financially challenging. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment with furniture collected from yard sales. I started as a junior engineer while Linda worked as a teacher's assistant. We counted pennies for groceries, but found joy in simple pleasures like Sunday picnics in the park or movie nights on our second-hand couch. Despite the financial stress, those first years held a special magic. We were partners facing the world together. My career gradually advanced. I moved from junior engineer to project manager, then to senior engineer, specializing in complex commercial structures. Each promotion meant longer hours and more responsibility, but also financial security. When Linda became pregnant with Ethan in our 5th year of marriage, I took on additional weekend consulting work to prepare for our growing family. Ethan's birth changed everything. Holding my son for the first time, I made a silent promise to give him opportunities I never had. That commitment drove every career decision that followed. When offered a promotion that required extensive travel, I initially declined to stay close to my family. But as education costs and household expenses grew, I eventually accepted similar roles, telling myself the sacrifice was worthwhile for their future. The most significant moment in our financial journey came 15 years ago when we purchased our current home. It took nearly 2 decades of saving, but I can still recall Linda's face when I handed her the keys. The house needed considerable work, but I spent weekends and evenings renovating each room. I built Ethan's treehouse in the backyard with my own hands, installed the kitchen cabinets Linda had admired in magazines, and created a home office where she could pursue her interests. My relationship with Ethan was especially meaningful during his childhood years. I taught him to ride his first bike, patiently running alongside him until he found his balance. We spent summers fishing at the lake, his excitement contagious whenever he caught something. We built model airplanes together, my hands guiding his as we carefully assembled each piece. Those precious moments grew fewer as my career demands increased, but I treasured each one. Everything changed when Ethan met Sophia Morgan during his final year of college. The Morgans were old money, with Harold running a successful investment firm and Victoria maintaining their social status in country club circles. From our first meeting, I sensed their judgment. My practical Toyota parked beside their Mercedes seemed to symbolize the gulf between our worlds. After the wedding 3 years ago, Ethan began spending most holidays with the Morgans. Our invitations were often declined with vague excuses about prior commitments. When they did visit, conversation inevitably turned to the Morgans' recent European vacation or their country club connections. Harold frequently offered unsolicited financial advice, suggesting my investment strategies were outdated. Victoria would subtly comment on our home's modest furnishings or neighborhood location. My relationship with Ethan grew increasingly strained. The son who once proudly introduced me to friends as the dad who could build anything now seemed embarrassed by my practical approach to life. Our conversations became shorter and less frequent. He stopped asking for advice or sharing details about his life. When I called, he would rush through conversations, always too busy to talk. Despite these changes, I continued believing my role was to provide financial security. The opportunity to work on a major development in Dubai for 3 months seemed perfect. The substantial bonus would help me pay off our remaining mortgage and perhaps fund the kitchen renovation Linda had mentioned. I convinced myself that this financial contribution would repair the growing distance in our family. Before leaving for Dubai, I organized a special dinner. I grilled steaks, prepared Linda's favorite salad, and bought an expensive bottle of wine. I imagined a warm evening reconnecting with my wife, discussing our plans for when I returned. Instead, Linda seemed distracted, checking her phone repeatedly. When I expressed my hopes that the Dubai project would strengthen our financial future, she merely nodded without meeting my eyes. As I packed my bags that night, I spotted an old photo on our dresser. It showed the 3 of us at Ethan's high school graduation, smiling with genuine happiness. I placed it carefully in my suitcase, a reminder of what I was working to preserve. During my first weeks in Dubai, Linda called daily. We shared details about our days, and she seemed interested in my project. She described her volunteer work at the community center and mentioned plans to repaint the guest room. These conversations, despite the distance, made me feel connected to home. The subtle shifts began gradually. By the second month, our calls grew shorter. Linda always had a reason. She was heading out to meet friends, joining a committee meeting, or simply too tired to talk long. Weekend calls became particularly brief, with Linda explaining she had plans with various social groups I had never heard mentioned before. One Tuesday evening, I called earlier than usual, hoping to catch her before her book club. A male voice answered her phone. Before I could respond, I heard Linda say, "Is that my phone? Tell them I will call back later." The call disconnected abruptly. When Linda called back hours later, she explained casually that Victoria Morgan had stopped by with some home decoration catalogs, and Harold had accidentally answered her phone when it rang. The explanation seemed reasonable, but something in her tone left me uneasy. Ethan's communications grew even more sporadic. My texts often went unanswered for days. When he did call, the conversations lasted barely 5 minutes. He consistently mentioned being busy with work or obligations to Sophia's family. When I asked about their plans for Christmas, he seemed uncomfortable mentioning that the Morgans were hosting a gathering, but assuring me they would save our family celebration for my return in January. The first truly concerning moment came when I received a video from Mike, my colleague, who had returned to the States for a family emergency. The clip showed Linda shopping at an upscale mall with Victoria Morgan and Sophia. They were laughing, carrying multiple bags from luxury stores I knew Linda had always considered extravagant. The date stamp showed it was a Wednesday afternoon. The same day, Linda had told me she couldn't talk because she was volunteering. I felt a strange hollowness watching my wife enjoying herself with the Morgans. Not because she deserved no happiness while I was away, but because of the growing web of small deceptions. Why lie about spending time with them? The question lingered uncomfortably in my mind. More troubling incidents accumulated. A company holiday photo posted online showed Linda at the Morgans Country Club, her arm linked with Harold's, as they stood beside a massive Christmas tree. Ethan mentioned in passing that Linda had been helping Sophia redecorate their home, spending several days per week there. A neighbor emailed asking if we were considering selling our house as she had seen a real estate agent taking exterior photos. Each night, I would work 14 hours on the construction site, pushing through exhaustion by focusing on the bonus that would benefit my family. During brief breaks, I would stare at photos of Linda and Ethan on my phone, trying to reconcile the growing distance with the decades of shared history. Mid-December brought a particularly difficult week on the project. Facing significant structural challenges, I worked through multiple nights to resolve the issues. During this stressful period, Linda's calls stopped entirely. Her texts became generic. "Hope your day goes well," or "take care of yourself," messages that could have been sent to anyone. I tried ignoring the growing knot of anxiety in my stomach. Perhaps Linda was simply busy with holiday preparations. Maybe the time difference made regular communication difficult. I focused instead on selecting the perfect Christmas gift for her, a diamond necklace I had been saving for over 6 months. The pendant featured interlocking circles symbolizing our unbroken connection, despite physical distance. I imagined her face lighting up when she opened it. 2 weeks before my scheduled return, I made a decision. The project had reached a stable phase ahead of schedule. With the approval of my supervisor, I arranged to return home early, planning to surprise my family for Christmas. I imagined the joy on Linda's face, the warm reunion, the holiday we would share. This early return would be my gift to them, additional time together after months apart. The flight home was filled with anticipation and nervous energy. I mentally rehearsed my surprise entrance, picturing Linda's embrace and Ethan's smile. In the airport gift shop, I purchased additional presents, a handcrafted scarf for Linda and a premium watch for Ethan. I wanted this homecoming to mark a new beginning for our family, reinforcing the bonds that seemed to have weakened during my absence. As the taxi approached our neighborhood on Christmas Eve, soft snow was falling. Holiday lights decorated the houses, and through windows I glimpsed families gathered together. My heart raced with expectation as we turned onto our street. That was when I noticed the unfamiliar luxury SUV in our driveway, the Morgans' vehicle. An unexpected complication in my surprise plan, but not necessarily concerning. Perhaps they were simply visiting for the holiday. I paid the driver a block away, preferring to approach quietly to maximize the surprise. With gifts in hand and anticipation building, I had no idea I was walking toward the moment that would change everything. Standing outside my own home felt strangely disorienting. Christmas lights outlined the roof and windows, casting a warm glow against the early evening darkness. Through gaps in the curtains, I could see movement inside. Rather than ring the doorbell and announce my arrival, I decided to enhance the surprise by entering quietly through the rear patio door, using my key. As I made my way around the side of the house, I noticed several unfamiliar potted plants decorating our porch. The old welcome mat with our family name had been replaced by an elegant seasonal design I had never seen before. These small changes created a subtle sense of disconnection, tiny details suggesting the home had evolved during my absence. Music and conversation drifted through the windows. I recognized Ethan's laugh, followed by a deeper male voice I identified as Harold Morgan's. Setting down my suitcase by the garden shed, I moved closer to the windows, curious about the gathering, before making my entrance. Through the kitchen window, I observed a scene that seemed pulled from a holiday magazine. Our usually modest dining table had been replaced by a larger, more ornate version. Crystal glasses and fine china I did not recognize adorned its surface. Victoria Morgan moved confidently through our kitchen opening cabinets and directing two younger women where to find serving platters. She handled our home with the familiarity of someone accustomed to being in charge. Moving to the living room window, I noticed more significant changes. Our comfortable but worn furniture had been replaced by sleek, modern pieces. The family photos that once lined the mantel were gone, substituted with artistic arrangements and elegant candles. The Christmas tree stood in its usual corner, but decorated in a coordinated gold and white theme rather than our traditional collection of sentimental ornaments collected over decades. Most striking was the absence of any visible trace of me. The recliner where I read evening news, the shelf holding my engineering awards, the corner where I kept my favorite books, all transformed as if I had never existed in this space. I felt like a ghost observing a home that had once been mine but had been systematically erased and reborn in my absence. In the center of the room stood Ethan, now 25, dressed in an expensive-looking sweater, gesturing animatedly as he spoke to Harold and Sophia. They formed a tableau of comfortable affluence, glasses of wine in hand, laughing at some shared joke. Two other couples I did not recognize completed the gathering. The scene projected holiday perfection, except for one glaring absence. Linda was nowhere to be seen. I shifted positions, scanning the room, wondering where my wife might be. That was when I noticed movement on the balcony off our bedroom. Through the glass doors, I could make out Linda's silhouette. She stood alone, facing away from the festivities, her posture suggesting distress. Even from a distance, the slight shaking of her shoulders revealed she was crying. The contrast was jarring. Inside, celebration and laughter. Outside, my wife of 27 years stood isolated in her grief. The Christmas lights, strung along the balcony railing, reflected in the window glass, creating a surreal backdrop to her solitary figure. She made no effort to wipe away tears or compose herself. It was the private crying of someone who believed themselves completely alone. I considered rushing to her immediately. My instinct was to offer comfort, to discover the source of her pain. But something held me back. A sense that I needed to understand the full situation before revealing my presence. Instead of making my way to the balcony, I moved closer to the living room window, positioning myself where I could hear the conversation inside while remaining hidden in the shadows. Harold Morgan's confident voice carried clearly. The real estate market in this neighborhood has appreciated nicely. When we list this property after the holidays, you should see a substantial return, enough to make a significant down payment on something in our community. Ethan nodded enthusiastically. The houses you showed us last week were perfect. So much closer to you guys and to my office. Sophia, elegantly dressed in a designer outfit, gestured around our living room. This place has good bones, but it's so dated. All these repairs would cost more than they're worth. Starting fresh makes more sense. Victoria added, Linda's been receptive to our suggestions about staging. Once we clear out the older furniture and Jason's clutter, it will show much better. I felt physically ill hearing them casually discuss dismantling the home I had worked my entire adult life to build. But it was Ethan's next words that truly devastated me. Dad won't be back for 2 more weeks. He's always been more committed to his projects than to us anyway. When he calls, I'll explain how this move makes financial sense. He only understands things in terms of money. Sophia laughed lightly. Your father is so provincial. I'm amazed your mother tolerated it all these years. "27 years in this outdated house," Victoria said, shaking her head. "Linda deserves the lifestyle we can provide. Harold's already found her the perfect position on the community art committee." Harold checked his watch. "Speaking of Linda, she's been out there for 20 minutes. Should someone check on her?" Ethan sighed. "Mom still gets emotional about the changes. She'll be fine. She knows this is for the best." The casual dismissal of Linda's obvious distress struck me as profoundly callous. The son I had raised to be compassionate now seemed indifferent to his mother's pain, more concerned with impressing his in-laws than supporting his family. "I told her we'll hire people to pack everything," Victoria continued. "She needn't worry about Jason's belongings. We can have them moved to storage until he decides what to do." My mind reeled at the presumption. They spoke of my life, my home, my possessions, as if I were already gone, an inconvenient ghost whose existence complicated their plans. In that moment, standing unnoticed in the darkness outside my own home, I truly understood how completely I had been written out of my family's story. I shifted position to look again at Linda on the balcony. She remained motionless, staring at the Christmas lights, tears silently tracking down her cheeks. Was she mourning our marriage? Feeling guilty about the deception, or simply overwhelmed by the Morgans' domineering presence in our lives? The woman who had once shared every thought with me had become an enigma. Rather than confront them immediately in anger, I retreated silently. I needed time to process what I had witnessed and determine my response. As I picked up my suitcase and walked away from the home I had built, one thought crystallized with absolute clarity: nothing would ever be the same again. The weight of betrayal followed me as I drove aimlessly through our town. Holiday decorations blurred past my windows, their cheerful glow a stark contrast to the darkness I felt inside. I eventually parked at a hotel lot, not ready to check in, just needing a place to sit and think. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone. If what I had witnessed was truly happening, there would be evidence. Linda and I had always shared passwords as a matter of practical convenience rather than surveillance. I had never before felt compelled to check her emails or messages, now that trust seemed naively misplaced. I opened her email account first. The evidence appeared immediately in her inbox. An email thread with the subject line, "Divorce Filing Timeline," contained correspondence between Linda and a law firm I did not recognize. The most recent message, dated just 3 days earlier, included the line, "We recommend initiating proceedings while your husband remains in Dubai, allowing for service of papers upon his return in January." My stomach clenched as I continued searching. A message from Harold Morgan contained details about a real estate listing agreement, ready for signatures after the holidays. Another email chain discussed the division of our joint accounts, with Harold offering to guide Linda through optimizing her financial position. The betrayal cut deeper upon discovering a draft email to me that Linda had apparently never sent. It contained phrases clearly rehearsed for delivering painful news. "We've grown in different directions, and I need to find myself after years of living in your shadow, and Ethan agrees this is for the best." The phone's screen blurred as tears filled my eyes. 27 years of marriage reduced to cliches and financial transactions. My chest physically ached as I struggled to reconcile the Linda I had loved with the woman who could plan this level of deception. I switched to reviewing text messages, finding conversations with Victoria about furniture shopping and home staging. One exchange particularly stood out. Linda had written, "I feel terrible doing this while he's away working for our future." Victoria's response was telling, "He chose his priorities long ago. Now it's time for you to choose yours." The night stretched endlessly as I sat in my car, reliving moments of our marriage. I remembered the day Ethan was born, Linda gripping my hand through her labor, our shared joy at his first cry. I recalled building our deck together, Linda handing me nails and laughing when I hit my thumb. Thousands of shared meals, conversations, and quiet moments of connection played through my mind. Had I misinterpreted our entire relationship, had my focus on providing financial security created the emotional distance that led to this betrayal? The questions tormented me as midnight approached. I forced myself to be honest about my contributions to our failing marriage. My absences for work while financially motivated had left Linda alone too often. My fatigue upon returning home had sometimes prevented meaningful connection. I had assumed Linda understood my sacrifices were expressions of love rather than rejections of family time. Yet nothing justified the scale of this deception. Planning to sell our home while I worked overseas, preparing divorce papers to be served upon my return, allowing the Morgans to essentially colonize our lives. These weren't responses to neglect, but calculated decisions made over months. As Christmas Eve turned to Christmas morning, my initial shock and pain began transforming into something else. Quiet, resolute determination. I would not allow myself to be discarded so casually after decades of dedication to my family. At 2 a.m., I called Thomas, my oldest friend, and a respected attorney. I apologized for the hour, but explained the situation concisely. His immediate response was both compassionate and practical. "Document everything before you confront them," he advised. "Take photos of the home changes, save all emails and texts. Most importantly, protect your finances immediately. Given their planning, they may move quickly once they know you're aware." Thomas outlined several critical steps: secure personal documents, establish separate banking accounts, change passwords on financial platforms, and catalog valuable possessions with photographic evidence. He offered to begin preparing counter-legal measures immediately. "You have rights, Jason," Thomas assured me. "The house is primarily in your name. Your retirement accounts are protected, and you have options beyond simply accepting their terms." His calm, professional assessment steadied me. This wasn't just about emotional hurt. It was about preventing the complete dismantling of the life I had built. With renewed focus, I began planning my response. I drove to a 24-hour department store, purchasing a prepaid phone and a notebook. In the quiet corner of their deserted cafe, I created a detailed inventory of our assets, listed account numbers, and outlined immediate actions. By dawn, I had transformed from a man broken by betrayal to one methodically preparing to protect himself. The emerging plan wasn't about revenge. Despite my pain, I didn't want to destroy Linda or hurt Ethan. But neither would I allow myself to be manipulated, deceived, and discarded according to their convenient timeline. I would reclaim my dignity and ensure that any resolution would reflect fairness rather than exploitation. As sunrise approached, I made several decisive calls: to my bank, to a locksmith, and to a moving company. Each conversation represented a step toward regaining control of my circumstances. The path ahead would be difficult, but for the first time since witnessing the scene in my home, I felt a sense of clarity and purpose. Before leaving the cafe, I stared at the diamond necklace I had purchased for Linda. The interlocking circles now seemed a cruel irony, a symbol of connection I had believed in unilaterally. I carefully returned it to its box. Despite everything, it still represented my genuine feelings. I would leave it behind as both gift and goodbye. Outside, Christmas Day was dawning cold and clear. Holiday lights still twinkled in the early morning darkness, but their meaning had transformed overnight. What once represented homecoming now illuminated the path to an unexpected new beginning. Christmas morning arrived with crystalline clarity, both in the bright winter sunshine and in my resolve. By 7 a.m., I had secured a room at a downtown hotel and begun implementing the plan developed during my sleepless night. My first call was to Secure Locks, a 24-hour emergency service. I explained that I had lost my house keys while traveling and needed all locks changed immediately. The holiday premium was substantial, but the technician agreed to arrive by 9 a.m. Next, I contacted First National Bank, where I had a personal relationship with the manager. Though officially closed for the holiday, she agreed to meet me briefly to handle urgent account changes. At the bank, I transferred half of our joint savings to a new individual account. Thomas had advised this specific amount, enough to protect me financially without creating legal complications regarding marital assets. I also retrieved important documents from our safety deposit box, including the house deed, which confirmed my primary ownership with Linda as secondary holder. By 11 a.m., the locksmith had completed changing every external lock on our home. I timed this carefully, having observed the Morgan family tradition of Christmas brunch at their country club. Through discreet questioning of neighbors, I confirmed the entire group had departed around 10:30, dressed formally and traveling in multiple vehicles. With the house temporarily empty, I made my next move. Atlas Moving Company had agreed to an emergency holiday service call, again at premium rates. Their 3-person crew arrived promptly at noon, ready to execute my specific instructions. Only the items on this list, I explained, showing them a detailed inventory. Nothing else is to be touched. The crew worked efficiently, removing my personal belongings, specific pieces of furniture that had been in my family, and select mementos. I directed them to leave the shared spaces largely intact, focusing instead on reclaiming what was undeniably mine: my home office equipment, clothes, family heirlooms, and personal documents. Each item was photographed before removal, creating a record that would withstand legal scrutiny. As the movers worked, I walked through the transformed house, cataloging changes. The family photo wall had been replaced with abstract artwork. The kitchen renovations included appliances I had never seen. Even the master bedroom had been subtly modified. My reading chair replaced my books, removed from bedside tables, my presence systematically erased. In our bedroom closet, I found boxes labeled Jason's Things pushed to the back corner. The casual disregard stung but strengthened my resolve. I was not an afterthought to be packed away and dealt with later. The most painful discovery came in Ethan's old room, now converted to a guest space. The desk where I had helped him with homework, the walls where his sports trophies had hung. All evidence of our shared history had vanished. In its place stood generic luxury, a hotel-like environment stripped of personality and memory. By 2 p.m., the movers had loaded everything into their truck, destined for a storage unit Thomas had arranged. I remained behind to complete the most difficult task, saying goodbye to the home that represented 30 years of dreams and effort. In the kitchen, I placed the diamond necklace on the counter, along with a brief note. I was here. I saw everything. I heard everything. The locks have been changed. Please respect that this house remains legally mine until we determine next steps. Contact Thomas Wilson regarding any communication. Goodbye, Linda. The simplicity of the note belied the complexity of emotions behind it. No accusations, no angry outbursts, just acknowledgement of reality and a clear boundary. Thomas had emphasized the importance of documenting my continued claim to the property while avoiding statements that could be construed as abandonment. As I prepared to leave, I noticed Linda's collection of family Christmas ornaments stored in a box marked "Donate" in the garage. Despite everything, I couldn't bear the thought of these memories being discarded. I rescued the box, adding it to my belongings. At 3:30 p.m., I received a text from my neighbor Alan, confirming that the Morgan entourage was returning to the house. Perfect timing. I positioned myself in my rental car down the street, wanting to witness their reaction, but avoid immediate confrontation. The procession of luxury vehicles arrived at 4 p.m. Harold's Range Rover leading, followed by Ethan's BMW and another SUV I didn't recognize. From my vantage point, I watched as Linda attempted her key in the new lock, confusion, evident even from a distance. Harold tried next, then made a call while gesturing at the door. Their collective bewilderment would have been comical under different circumstances. Within 20 minutes, a locksmith arrived, presumably an emergency service similar to the one I had used earlier. This attempt to regain entry was precisely why Thomas had advised me to remain nearby. I stepped out of my car and walked calmly toward the gathering on my porch. The expressions that greeted me ranged from shock to anger. Linda's face drained of color. Ethan's mouth opened in speechless surprise. Harold Morgan's features hardened into a mask of controlled fury. "Jason," Linda finally managed, her voice barely audible. "You're back early." "Evidently," I replied, maintaining a calm I did not entirely feel. "Though based on your plans, any return would have been inconvenient." Harold stepped forward, assuming his natural position of authority. "There seems to be a misunderstanding about the locks." "No misunderstanding," I stated firmly. "I changed them deliberately after observing last night's gathering and reviewing emails regarding plans to sell my home without my knowledge." Ethan flushed deeply. "Dad, we were going to discuss everything when you returned. This is completely unreasonable." "Unreasonable," I repeated, letting the word hang in the air. "Is that how you characterize secretly planning to divorce your father while he works overseas, or discussing the sale of his home as he earns the money that paid for it, or perhaps allowing your in-laws to redecorate and reorganize while systematically removing every trace of my existence?" Victoria attempted intervention, her social graces never failing. "Perhaps we should all calm down and discuss this privately, rather than creating a neighborhood spectacle." "I agree completely," I responded. "However, that discussion will occur through our respective attorneys. For now, I'd appreciate if everyone not legally residing at this address would leave the property." Harold's face darkened. "You can't prevent Linda from entering her own home." "Actually, he can," interrupted a new voice. Thomas had arrived exactly as planned, his timing impeccable. "The deed lists Jason as primary owner. While this will eventually require legal resolution for tonight, he has the right to secure his property." The standoff lasted several tense minutes. Linda finally broke the silence, her voice trembling. "Where am I supposed to go?" The question hit me with unexpected force. Despite everything, seeing her distress still affected me. "I've paid for a suite at the Westbrook Hotel through New Year's. After that, I'm sure the Morgans can accommodate you while we sort things legally." Harold began to protest, but Thomas smoothly interjected with business cards and procedural details, effectively diffusing the immediate confrontation. The conversation shifted to practical arrangements. Linda would be allowed to collect essential items tomorrow, with Thomas present. Formal communications would occur through attorneys, and temporary arrangements would be established pending formal proceedings. Throughout this exchange, I maintained a calm exterior that concealed my inner turmoil. When Ethan finally met my eyes, I saw a flicker of recognition, perhaps the first acknowledgement that his actions had consequences beyond his immediate plans. But any hope for reconciliation seemed distant as he quickly looked away, moving closer to Sophia and her parents. As the group reluctantly dispersed, Linda paused before getting into Harold's vehicle. "Did you read my emails?" she asked, a hint of indignation in her voice. Yes, I answered honestly. After seeing you cry on the balcony, while our son discussed selling our home with his in-laws, would you have preferred I remained ignorant until served with divorce papers upon my scheduled return? She had no response, just a long look I couldn't interpret before turning away. As their vehicles pulled from the curb, I stood in front of my home, physically present, but feeling like a stranger nonetheless. The Christmas lights continued their cheerful blinking, oblivious to the shattered holiday and broken family they illuminated. Thomas placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. The first day is the hardest. Tomorrow, we start rebuilding. I nodded, unable to find words adequate to the moment. As twilight deepened on Christmas Day, I entered my secured but empty feeling house, closing the door on the life I had known and facing the uncertainty of what would come next. 6 months have passed since that Christmas revelation. Spring has bloomed and faded into summer, mirroring my own transition from acute pain to cautious renewal. My new home sits 20 miles from the old one, a modest beachfront cottage purchased with proceeds from the eventual sale of our family house. The constant rhythm of waves provides a soundtrack for healing that I never knew I needed. The legal proceedings were less contentious than I initially feared. Thomas proved invaluable negotiating a settlement that recognized my contributions to our marital assets, while avoiding protracted courtroom battles. The family home sold quickly, its proceeds divided according to our agreement. Linda received a fair portion of our investments, while my retirement accounts remained largely intact. My beachfront cottage became my sanctuary and rehabilitation center. Unlike our former home with its grand dimensions and formal spaces, this place reflects a simpler aesthetic. The open kitchen faces the ocean. The living room contains only furniture I love. My office doubles as a workshop where I can pursue long-abandoned interests in woodworking and model building. Every space exists to serve my actual life rather than projecting an image for others. The initial weeks alone were undeniably difficult. I faced sleepless nights replaying memories, questioning where things went wrong, and wrestling with anger that threatened to become toxic. The emotional aftermath felt like physical illness. Appetite disappeared, energy evaporated, and even simple tasks required enormous effort. Thomas, recognizing my struggle, connected me with a men's support group specifically for those navigating midlife transitions. Meeting others experiencing similar challenges provided perspective and practical coping strategies. These weekly gatherings became anchors in my unmoored life, offering both compassion and accountability. Grief isn't just for death, explained Marcus, our group facilitator, during my first session. You're mourning the loss of your marriage, your role as husband, your expectations for the future. That deserves acknowledgement. Those words granted permission to fully experience my pain rather than suppress it. I learned to sit with difficult emotions without allowing them to define me. The anger gradually transformed into determination to build something new. The betrayal slowly lost its power to devastate me anew each morning. Physical activity became crucial to my recovery. I began with solitary morning walks along the beach, eventually progressing to regular swims and joining a local hiking group. These activities provided natural endorphins while creating structure in days that might otherwise have drifted purposelessly. My body, neglected during years of desk work, responded with increased energy and improved sleep. New interests emerged as I explored aspects of myself long subordinated to career and family responsibilities. I enrolled in a photography course capturing coastal landscapes and architectural details that caught my eye. I joined a community cooking class, learning to prepare meals that nourished both body and spirit. These activities weren't mere distractions, but rediscoveries of joy independent of my former roles. The most unexpected healing came through volunteering at a community center construction project. Using my professional skills to design and build a gathering space for others provided purpose beyond personal concerns. Working alongside diverse volunteers, sharing knowledge and seeing tangible results reconnected me to core values that transcended my personal circumstances. Linda contacted me 3 months after our separation. Her email was tentative, suggesting coffee at a neutral location. I agreed with some trepidation, unsure what purpose such a meeting might serve. We met at a waterfront cafe midway between our new residences. The woman across the table seemed both familiar and strange. Linda appeared simultaneously more confident and more uncertain, assured in her new designer outfit, but hesitant in her interactions with me. The conversation began awkwardly, with surface-level updates and careful avoidance of difficult topics. "I never meant for things to happen as they did," she eventually offered. "The Morgans became increasingly involved after you left for Dubai. Their lifestyle, their certainty about everything. It was like being swept into a current." I considered her words carefully before responding. "I understand influence and persuasion. What I struggle with is deception. You could have told me you were unhappy, that you wanted changes." "Would you have really listened?" she asked. "You were always so focused on providing, on working. There never seemed to be space for me to say I wanted something different." Her observation carried painful truth. I had equated financial security with happiness, assuming my contributions were sufficient evidence of commitment. I had perhaps listened without truly hearing for years. "I think we both failed each other in different ways," I acknowledged. "But I would have preferred honest conflict to silent betrayal." We talked for nearly 2 hours, neither seeking nor offering complete reconciliation, but achieving something valuable nonetheless: recognition of our shared history without denying the reality of our separate futures. When we parted, something had shifted. The conversation hadn't erased the past, but had perhaps made it less defining of my present emotional state. Ethan proved more difficult. My son maintained distance for months, communicating only through formal legal channels regarding property division. His absence created a different kind of pain. Not the shocking betrayal of my marriage's end, but a persistent ache of parental loss. 5 months after Christmas, an unexpected email arrived. "Can we talk?" Ethan wrote. "Not about legal matters, just talk." We met at a local brew pub, he suggested. The setting felt deliberately casual, perhaps an attempt to neutralize the emotional weight of our conversation. He arrived looking simultaneously more mature and less certain than when I had last seen him. "I've been thinking about something you said," he began after initial awkward greetings. "About dignity and choices. I didn't understand then, but I'm starting to now." He explained that recent months had brought challenges in his own marriage. Sophia's parents had become increasingly controlling, weighing in on everything from their career choices to home decorating decisions. The parallels to their interference in my marriage weren't lost on either of us. "I remembered watching you stand your ground that day," Ethan continued. "Not shouting, not threatening, just calmly refusing to be manipulated. It made me realize I've been letting others make my choices for too long." The conversation remained careful, our relationship too damaged for immediate restoration. But it represented a beginning. His acknowledgement of my personhood beyond my parental role, my recognition of his struggle to establish his own identity. We agreed to monthly dinners, a modest commitment to rebuilding what had been broken. Perhaps the most significant development in my journey came through an unexpected friendship. Laura Jenkins, a retired literature professor, lives in the cottage neighboring mine. Our acquaintance began with simple, neighborly interactions. Borrowed garden tools, collected mail during brief absences, occasional conversations over shared property lines. These casual exchanges gradually deepened as we discovered shared interests in architecture, historical novels, and jazz music. Unlike the awkward setups friends attempted in the early months after my divorce, this connection evolved naturally, without pressure or expectations. Laura, widowed 5 years earlier, understands grief's landscape intimately. Our friendship offers mutual support without romantic complications. We enjoy occasional dinners, museum visits, and long walks where conversations range from philosophical questions to mundane daily observations. Her perspective, as someone further along the healing journey, provides both hope and practical wisdom. "The trick isn't forgetting," she told me during a sunset beach walk. "It's integrating what happened into a larger story that doesn't end with loss." 6 months ago, I could not have imagined finding equilibrium again, much less building something meaningful from the wreckage of my former life. Yet here I stand on my small deck facing the ocean, watching gulls wheel against the evening sky, feeling a quiet contentment that seemed impossible during those dark winter days. The greatest lesson has been recognizing my own value beyond productivity and provision. For decades, I measured my worth through financial contributions and material achievements. The painful dissolution of my marriage forced reconsideration of this limited self-concept. I have learned that dignity comes not from what I provide, but from how I live, with authenticity, integrity, and openness to growth, even through pain. Last month, I launched a foundation using a portion of my retirement funds. The Men's Renewal Project offers resources, mentorship, and community for middle-aged men facing significant life transitions. Our programs combine practical skills development with emotional support, addressing the particular challenges men often face in acknowledging vulnerability and seeking assistance. Linda and I finalized our divorce without acrimony. Ethan and I continue our cautious rebuilding through monthly dinners and occasional weekend activities. The Morgans remain peripheral figures in my life, occasionally mentioned, but no longer wielding influence over my emotional well-being. Sometimes, standing on the shore at sunrise, I reflect on how differently events might have unfolded had I discovered their plans after returning as scheduled in January. Would I have fought harder to preserve what was already lost? Would bitterness have consumed me more completely? The pain of that Christmas revelation, while devastating, ultimately provided opportunity for clear-sighted assessment and decisive action. Perhaps life's most profound paradox is how losing what we thought essential can reveal new possibilities previously invisible. In releasing my grip on what could not be preserved, I discovered strengths, interests, and connections I might never have known otherwise. The end of one story has become the beginning of another one. I am writing with greater awareness and authenticity. As the sun breaks over the horizon, painting the waves in golden light, I understand something crucial. Sometimes losing a family is the unexpected path to finding yourself. And in that discovery lies the possibility of creating connections based not on obligation or history, but on genuine presence and mutual respect. What about you? Have you ever experienced a painful ending that eventually led to unexpected new beginnings? Share your story in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and renewal. Thank you for listening, and remember that even our darkest moments can contain the seeds of future strength and wisdom.